Why story? What is a story? So once upon a time, information was scarce. The way we stayed alive as human beings was by depending on the experts that surrounded us, the wisdom that was passed down by elders, and through stories, right? That was how we passed on knowledge generation after generation. But as you know, today things have changed. It's overwhelming, right? We're sort of drowning in a sea of data and ads and bullshit. And who are the folks who are, funding the stories that sort of inspire us to buy or to purchase or to, waste our dollars? It's big companies, right? They're the ones who have these big budgets. They know that stories have the ability to hijack our brains, right? But what's the flip side, right? What's the flip side of living in a world of too much information? It's that, yes, we're susceptible to great stories on both sides, right? To do good or to do bad. So why story? What makes story particularly impactful and meaningful? There's 3 criteria. I'm just going to go into one of them, but just to summarize, stories are memorable, impactful, and personal. These are the sort of the aspects of story that make them meaningful to all of us. And this is to say memorable and impactful and personal as compared to data and information, right? This is the particular distinction. And if you had to sort of give a world history of what kind of marketplace or economy we're living in today, you can sort of say that at a certain point we had the Industrial Revolution, right? We lived through the Information Revolution. And right now I would argue that we're living through a meaning revolution, right? We're looking for meaning and purpose in the lives that we are living. So I just want to go through a quick case study on why story is particularly impactful. So in 2007 at Carnegie Mellon, I believe, there was a study trying to understand the impact of story versus statistics when it came to students coming out of this study. So there was a double-blind study. It was pretty strict, but in one group of students, they had for their case of support, they just had a story about an individual who was impacted by food insecurity in Africa. And on the other side, they had statistics. Is anyone familiar with this study by any chance? So what was fascinating was that at the end of the study, they asked the students, hey, here's $5 for your time in participating in this study. Thank you for your time. And they gave them $5. And they said, hey, if you want, you can donate to this nonprofit, should you be interested. And the folks who had just a story, no facts, just a story at their disposal, they felt compelled to give, on average, $2.38, as compared to the group of students who had just statistics. It was $1.14. Now, I know you're thinking, well, what if we combine the two, right? What if we say leverage story and statistics to sort of improve that statistics number, right? Because I can imagine when you're getting these cases for support through your administrations, like that might be an argument that you could make. So the result is surprisingly still not great. So what does that mean? What's the insight here? The insight is that if you see the individual story combined with the data, the story feels like a drop in the bucket. Like here's this overwhelm of suffering and tragedy, and yet that story just feels like insignificant. It doesn't mean enough. It's a drop in the bucket. So in conclusion, right, story alone, twice as much as statistics. Story plus statistics, gives you 25% bonus. Deborah Small was the one who did the research back in 2007. Putting a face to the need tends to be more successful at producing giving than does a statistic revealing that tens of thousands of children or mothers are similarly suffering. So that's just a deep dive on why stories are impactful. We can have a whole workshop just on story alone, going into why they're memorable, why they're personal, all those things. But I want to get into the video stuff. What is a story? This is like a super tough question. And I even had to force myself, like if I had to come up with a definition, what would it be? I finally did come up with one. That's just where I arrived. Bernadette Jiwa, she's a fantastic storytelling expert. If anyone's heard of Seth Godin and Bernadette, like they're very simpatico, like from their workshops and their marketing wisdom. She says a story is a person or a character in a situation faced with a choice. What they do in that situation helps them learn something about themselves or the world, or changes their worldview. And I'm not completely satisfied with that definition. I like to sometimes think of what a story isn't. And from the perspective of a lot of nonprofits that I've worked with, I've tried to simplify the 3X structure, and folks usually just assume, Act 1, Act 2, Act 3, beginning, middle, and end. But it's much more useful to see a story structurally as starting with a setup, followed by a confrontation or conflict, and then a resolution. There was this myth that Ernest Hemingway and a bunch of his buddies in a bar, I don't know if it's true, nobody knows if it's true, but they attempted to tell the shortest story they could, right? For sale, baby shoes, never worn. Now, if you were to say, think about the antithesis of this or the opposite of this story, right? And make it just say purely factual, you could just say brand new baby shoes for sale, but you wouldn't have the emotional impact that the words never worn gives you, right? It's like, what happened? Like, never worn. Like, why? And that's the really most powerful part of a story, is that it creates a gap. There's a surprise, right? It's like, well, what is the thing that your human brain, your emotive heart wants to fill that story with? And that's the most powerful stories I've always found have that aspect. A topic is not a story. This might hurt some people. It's like, oh, I want to talk about this and this and this and this and this. That's a topic. That's a book report. What you really need to understand is that a story is not and. A story is but, then, however. Those kinds of words are about conflict. It's not a book report. It's not a list of facts, right? It's about what comes, but then what is in the way, and then what might follow, and so on and so forth. But it's never just, it's not a topic, right? So this is the definition I came up with, and I'm kind of happy with it. It introduces the elements that I enjoy talking about. A story is a character with a need or desire who, in the process of overcoming obstacles, emerges transformed. More simply, I think of stories of transformation, stories of change. If your character is not changed by the end, or your hero is not changed, then you probably want to find something else. Character tends to be an obstacle for folks trying to come up with a story. Who do we pick? What makes them a hero? Who is the hero, right? Is the donor the hero? Is the nonprofit the hero? Is it the recipient, the beneficiary, right? This is a really, really good question. And I don't see why it couldn't be a strawberry. That's it.
Sweet baby, I'll travel the world for you. I love you.
Can we get strawberries?
No, honey.
Please.
Okay.
I didn't make that. But I always use it as a reference for characters because some people always ask, oh, can my character be some inanimate object? Can it be the nonprofit, the institution, or whatever? Yeah, it could be a strawberry. It can be anything you want, but does the strawberry have the emotive power to connect with you, to, sort of like get those emotions going? I mean, when I see the rotting starting, I'm like, oh, it always gets me. There's some really key questions that I always ask when I'm developing a story for a client to figure out if our story works. And it kind of goes back to the definition that I originally shared earlier. Do you have interesting and relatable characters that want something, right? Do they have a desire? This goes back to the hair in the wind, right? It's like you feel like you're riding alongside this strawberry, and it's this fantastic, extraordinary journey. That's humanizing, right? Anthropomorphizing, or no, wait, is that right? Yes, yeah. Strawberry pomorphizing, whatever. What obstacles are in the way of your character's desire? And it's funny because I go back to Bernadette Jiwa's definition, and she talks about a story being a situation where a character has to make a choice. What's interesting about the strawberry's journey is that circumstance and the world that the strawberry is confronted with is not about choices. It's about desire. Love with a lemon, or, love with a young girl, right? That's the desire to be with, your full strawberryness, if you will. I don't know. Right? This is tough. This is a tough obstacle that we also can relate to as human beings, right? Seeing somebody outside the train at a station and having that connection with somebody and feeling like, oh, this could have been something, but no, not today. Right? Is there something at stake? Most definitely. Like, this is life or death for this strawberry. Can we show their journey? This is really important because, sometimes you're working on a project or you're trying to capture a story of somebody who you can't even document their history. You can't document their past. And if you don't have their photographs, if you don't have the testimonials of the witnesses of those people who were there, then it's really, really hard to show their story. But it's incredible when you look at the world or this journey through the point of view of a strawberry, that's incredible. One thing that's not on that list, which I debated about keeping on, is this idea of an antagonist. And I think of this girl, right? Sort of betrayingly, right? She's the one who wanted the strawberry. She's the one who wanted to enjoy that taste. And yet, like, it's because of, I don't know, circumstance or her choices that the strawberry ended up where it did. Does your story work? These are 4 really, really great questions that I always ask. It's like if you're collecting stories or you're looking at your story bank and you want to evaluate and prioritize, okay, well, which one of these should we be telling, or which ones will actually make it to the finish line? These are the aspects that will help you get to a story well told, not just a, run-of-the-mill story. All right? We usually, I like thinking about the story arc or the emotional arc of the story itself. We have the hook, the birth of a strawberry. We have the problem, right? These multiple obstacles that the strawberry meets along its journey. We have the solution, right? The final hope of love and connection, of being a purchased and enjoyed strawberry, right? And then you'll notice in the music, if you ever watch it again, look for The Extraordinary Life and Times of Strawberry, you'll notice the music right before that climax of when the strawberry enters the refrigerator and feels like it's, reached nirvana, right? The music just sort of takes a huge downturn. And then from there, it's a descending emotional turn, and you end up landing at the call to action. Right? Which is great if you look at it, right? SaveTheFood.com. That's a place to go. It's a call to action. It's all baked in, which is fantastic. Like, that's the best kind of call to action you can imagine. So have a place for somewhere to go, for folks to go, and also have them, something to do. Save the food. Like, what a call to action, right? So you try now. You guys want to try doing something like this? I go back to the for sale baby shoes never worn. A short story. And I tried to think of a motivation for like, what brings me here? What's my purpose? What's my story for coming here? And how do I say that in 6 words? And I was actually practicing with Stacy. We were kind of rehearsing through this. And let me tell you why I'm here in 6 words. Teaching video storytelling scales my impact. That was always a problem for me, that when I would take on clients who could sort of meet that production threshold, it ended up being disheartening because there were so many other people that I felt like I could serve and I could teach. And so that's why, thanks for coming. Teaching video storytelling scales my impact. So write your nonprofit's desire in 6 words. There's a couple note cards in front of you. I'd love to see what you guys come up with.